what we decided to do is to do what we call a gender review of our portfolio. We look at all the population, the active population in the portfolio to see how we were addressing gender issues, how we were incorporating gender, how we missed opportunities as well of really tackling women and also taking into account gender differences. And this has led to a number of recommendations. And the first one is that women and gender should be also at the center of our operation, not just to monitor the number of beneficiaries, but to have them significantly as actors, part of our program.
When income is in the hands of the mother in a family, the survival probability of a child increases by about 20% in Brazil. In Kenya, a child will be 17% taller because women invest more of their income in health and nutrition. In short, when women are economically empowered, infant mortality declines, agricultural productivity rises, population growth slows, economies expand, and cycles of poverty are broken.
What we try to do is establish the links more between economic opportunities and agency. And in Nigeria, we actually have a very nice recent example of this. A World Bank team did a study that looked at farmers, women and men farmers, managing plots in northern and southern Nigeria. And what they found was that there was a very strong endowment effect in the south, and in fact in both areas. So in other words, if you control so in both areas, women's managing plots, their plots were much less productive than men's. So that was sort of the base. But when they looked at endowments, so if they controlled in their analysis for things like land, fertilizer, credit, they found that the gap disappeared in the south. So you could give women the same endowments, and they would have the same productive farms. In the north, it wasn't the case. In the north, they controlled for the endowment effect, and it only erased roughly half of the difference. So there was still a lot of unexplained variance. So the question remains, in some cases, we know that endowments and equalizing endowments helps, but in other cases, it's not enough. So there are more factors at play. We think agency might help us fill out some of those gaps.
We in the ministry believe that poverty affects women more than men. And the more women that are brought out of that bracket of poverty, the more the ministry will feel that they have their mandates have been achieved.
Ultimately, We Connect International wants to encourage Nigerian companies to change the way they source, and in so doing, explore their potential to include more women-owned businesses in their supply chains, as this will improve the quality of women-owned businesses across the nation and provide corporations with larger pools of more innovative products and services to buy from.
For me, there's also social norms. How I grew up, what my parents said to me as I was growing up as a woman, that made me able to mix that and my education to be able to demand for equality and the rights to be self-actualized. So if we have 4 out of 10 people in the world thinking that men are more deserving of jobs than women, we can be sure that even some women think men should be more deserving. And this is where I can share an anecdote from my work. It's very, very hard to get women to participate in politics, whether it's as voters, campaigners, or as candidates. But increasingly, I'm hearing stories of women who want to run, who go to their first ladies in their states to get their support, and get told, if all the women want to run, what will our men do? So this is just a very practical example of this data that says 4 out of 10 people think men are more deserving of jobs than women. There are a lot of our mothers, and I'm sure so many people in this room, who actually train their children, even without the support of their husbands. The market women that are outside them, my mother is a typical one, and she trained me up to PhD level. She sells, food items, and there are so many of her friends who are actually selling food items in the market, and yet they train their children. They build houses, they have cars. How do you bring money to this, and how are these captured?
There's a lot being said now, especially in the context of security around intelligence. I can tell you that a woman in the household or a woman in the farm is best positioned to tell you about the movement of the populations in the community and outside.
When we are considering gender education, it has to be very important to look at the zone. Because there are some zones, by starting training gender is by starting training the men.
In my bank, within the last 2 years, from so many years of having no female director, there were 8 of us female directors. He provided the circular to banks to bring women on board. And even in the bank, within the last 2 years, my department moved from 20% women to 40% women.
Number one, when it comes to reproductive issues, we discover that almost all agencies, federal, local government, private sectors, discourage women, or they don't even allow women to enjoy both maternity leave and annual leave in the same year. If a woman should get pregnant in Nigeria today, enjoy your maternity leave, you'll be denied your annual leave.
But I want to say something about education and CEDAW. A big piece of CEDAW requires that curriculum are devoid of stereotypes. In fact, education curriculum are designed to challenge stereotypes. And frankly, I agree with you. For very young children, perhaps it is useful to learn in your original language, but you can't continue there. Right. So as long as we understand that, at some point you have to transition from your traditional language, right, to precisely. Otherwise, you're left out again. Right? Okay. I cannot see the similarity, which is that Nigeria is not different from the rest of the world. Essentially, the message is telling us the gender gap are significant, the social norms are a major impediment for agency to move and choices, and thirdly, it happens throughout the life cycles in different forms, and it's multidimensional. It's amazing to see how all of you have illustrated how it happens in Nigeria. So, if I may offer a few suggestions more going forward, I like very much, the point that was made. How do we empower the girl child, and we have role model? And actually, I was speaking of this gender lab that I described, which essentially is there to indeed do further assessment, review of what has happened, and come with additional recommendations on various elements. So I think that we can, together, all the agencies are there, the government has left, but we are in touch with Dr. Chi to see how to push that.